Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark DeVoe, and we'd like to say a very special thank you to all of you listening today, and especially those of you that are supporting this podcast with your patronage. We'd like to thank today, our patron of the week is Mr. John Day. Thank you very much, John, for supporting us. And if you would like to be like John, pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. Mr. Stay, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you? Now, first question, because we've had two coming off the back of two very special episodes, Linwood Barkley and Sarah Moorhead. It's been more about Sarah later at the end because she's been hitting all sorts of bestseller things on Kindle and what have you. But the question I haven't asked for a couple of weeks: how is the non-fiction project coming along?
Oh, Mark, the non-fiction project it's got a life of its own. It's like you start off in a boat and an oar, and you're like, I can't do this across the channel. And then someone gives you a sail, or you get like an idea that becomes your sail. And I really feel like there's momentum. Except, of course, the last couple of weeks has been massively busy with people joining the academy for the September intake. So the writing took a little bit of a hit on that, but actually the writing might have taken a little hit, but man, the cogs are whirring. I actually filled my first entire notebook of 150 pages. These are just ideas that I'm putting down. So yeah, very excited. And I decided to up the stakes because I realized that, everyone does, you go out the gate, you're really excited about your new writing project. Everyone's like, you're bashed out 1,000 words in the first day. And then of course, this isn't, as
reality kicks in.
Reality kicks in. Everyone listening who's ever tried to write a book knows exactly what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do as an additional incentive, because I said I'll take a year, for anyone who hadn't heard, I've announced I'm going to write this non-fiction book in a year, but I'm upping the stakes because I've decided to put it out there to our listeners. I'm looking for a merry band of non-fiction writers to join me on this journey in the academy. So if people are interested in writing a non-fiction book, we're going to do this together, not co-write it. Obviously, that would be ridiculous. But if you've always wanted to write a non-fiction book, or you're partly writing one, you're partway through a project, I'm going to be doing kind of an exclusive, academy non-fiction program over the next 12 months. And the crazy thing is, Mark, is that people get the life coaching obviously from me, but we've got Kate Harrison, who is a million-seller non-fiction writer, who's going to be coaching the non-fiction writers in this journey. So if people are interested, you know where to go, academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. And it's going to be an interesting experiment. I mean, I think safety in numbers, right?
That sounds great. Kate is ace as well. She's absolutely brilliant. She's been on the podcast a couple of times. I'll stick some links in the show notes, folks, so you can check that out. She really knows her stuff. She's terrific. Used to work in TV, of course, as well.
She did. And the interesting about Kate is that not only is she's written books about pitching. She's had an incredible best-selling non-fiction series, but she's also a fiction writer and a very successful one as well. So she's got a lot of knowledge across both areas. But
she's great.
Yeah, but she's great. We interviewed her a couple of times, and she was fantastic. So yeah, brilliant. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm going to need everyone's support. Once we get into that, the muddy middles hit a bit too early for me. I'm nowhere near the middle yet. How about you, Mark? How's it's been it's a busy time for you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, before we get to the good stuff, I discovered that we've been hinting for quite a while, a couple of years, I'm tentatively involved in a big TV show. Well, that big TV show was Nautilus, which was about the young Captain Nemo, and it was going to be on Disney Plus at the end of this year, and they got and bloody dropped it. So it's like, and I found this out like on a Sunday night, just scrolling through, the trades, and I found it on Deadline, and I was like, what? So anyway, I'm not going to talk about that now, but if you're interested, we'll pop that in extended so we can.
Yeah,
we can
you
talk
want to hear
about
this story,
and I can have a proper rant. I won't,
it's
honestly.
Very interesting.
Lawyers, stand down. But here's the good stuff. I got a book out. Hey! So by the time you listen to this, The Holly King will be in stores. It's technically out 14th of September. I've had stock for a couple of weeks, mate. I've been flogging them like Del Boy. They've been going out the door.
You've been driving around your local village and you're robbing Reliant, have you?
Exactly. Yeah. Roll up, stroll up. It's been great because what's lovely is I've been getting great feedback already. And a big thank you to everyone who's already left a review on NetGalley and Goodreads. People are loving it already. It's just been wonderful. Absolute joy. People are loving the cover by the wonderful Harry Goldhawk. So this is the 4th in the Witches of Woodville series, but works as a standalone. But if you want to come along and see me in the flesh, we're going to have a book launch. I will be clothed.
Okay, good.
Clothed.
Good. Just wanted to
fully clothed. We've got a book launch on Tuesday, 26th of September at 6:30 p.m. at Waterstones, Canterbury. I'll stick a thing in the show notes. The one thing as well, if you come to the book launch and you hand me a copy to sign, doesn't matter if you bought it on the night or you bought it beforehand, if you hand me a copy to sign, free bar of chocolate, branded Holly King chocolate, okay?
I'm flying over, Mark. I'm flying over.
While stocks last, one per customer. I got about 40 of them. So, so come along to that. If you can't wait that long, sorry, I'm going to be at FantasyCon, which is 15th to 17th of September in Birmingham. Although both my bits on the Friday night. So I'm doing a reading at 6 p.m. and then at 7 p.m. I'm moderating a panel on screenwriting with writers Mark Morris, Philip Fracassi, and friends of the podcast, Gavin G. Smith and Queve McDonnell. And that should be lots of fun. Yeah. So my bits on the Friday, I will be around on the Friday and the Saturday. Sunday morning, don't know, it's Birmingham. I have to drive back. I might disappear a bit early, but we'll see. Yes.
Brilliant. Well, best of luck with your launch. And if anyone is, if anyone's ever been at this place, I mean, every single book launch is like a new baby. And it's like you never get bored of it. They're all as special as all your other kids. So support Mark, go out and buy the Holly King, get it out there. And actually, we should say this, shouldn't we? The more people that buy a book on the first day of launch, the more it kicks in the algorithms on, do you think?
Opinion is divided. I prefer the steady trickle, actually. I think Amazon likes the steady trickle. I'm very iffy about the first day spike because once it tails off, you will get those chart positions, but then it tails off and Amazon's algorithms go, oh, everyone's lost interest and they bury you. Actually, the steady trickle really helps.
The momentum steady build.
The other thing I meant to mention is in the USA and Canada, I've gone wide. So it used to be only Kindle, but I'm now on Apple and Kobo and all the other suppliers out in the USA and Canada. So, and that's audio as well. So ebook and audio, you'll find me there. So, but if you want a signed copy, got to come to me, baby. Drop me a line.
I was going to say,
link in the show notes.
40 bars of chocolate. It's got the feeling of one of those Black Fridays at Walmart.
I wish.
You know what I mean? People camping outside Waterstones the night before and everyone getting in there and that 41st person like kicking off with their trolley. Yeah. It could be a mess, Mark. It could
backfire big time.
Riot in a bookstore. That would be a first, wouldn't it? Love it. Well, I've had, if it's like one of the chocolate bars that you very kindly sent me a number of times actually when you've released your books, I've got to say to everyone, the taste of the chocolate is worth the cost of the book alone. So the book's a bonus, right? I mean, so
I will say, Ian W. Sainsbury, I sent him a copy because he reads my first drafts and he gives me really good feedback. So I sent him a copy of the book. There is one on its way to Canada to you, Mr. D. But as with Ian, there's no chocolate this time. Ian put up a very funny video on Facebook going, "It's no chocolate. You know, there will be a reckoning."
You see,
once you have to avoid Ian for a while.
Once you set the expectation, right? Love it. Oh, that's great stuff. Brilliant. Well, let's dive in. We've got, talking of book launches and new books, our special guest today, I believe, has a book coming out around about now.
Yes, Harriet Muncaster is an award-winning author and illustrator. Her Isadora Moon books have sold over 2 million copies worldwide. And in 2020, she also published Bad and Glittering, the first part in her middle grade series featuring a character called Victoria Stitch. And now she's back with the latest Victoria Stitch book, Dark and Sparkling. And we discuss how she started working on Victoria Stitch when she was just 19, overcoming the fear of imperfection, and why it's perfectly normal for grown-ups to play with dolls and toys.
Brilliant. So let's dive in and listen to Mark chatting with the absolutely phenomenal Harriet Muncaster.
Harriet Muncaster, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh, pleasure. And it's such a joy to have you on because, one, you've got a new book coming, but you've had this extraordinary career. And folks, I'm going to be making a reference to a blog post that Harriet put about creating one of her characters, which we're going to focus on today, because I think there is so much to learn from this. Even if you're not a children's illustrating kind of guru, you just want to write stories and create worlds. There's so much to learn from this. But you've got a new Victoria Stitch book coming, dark and sparkling. Tell us about that wonderful new book.
Okay, so Victoria Stitch, this is the third Victoria Stitch book in the trilogy. And yes, this is coming in September. And I'm really excited about it because Victoria Stitch, I am so super passionate about Victoria Stitch and my Victoria Stitch world. So she is a whiskling. And whisklings are creatures that are no taller than 5 inches, and they live in a magical place called Whistling Wood. And they're born from crystals. And if you're born from a diamond, it means you're a royal. And Victoria Stitch and her twin sister were born from a diamond, but it had a black streak in it as an impurity. Which wasn't actually, but it meant they were relegated to live normal whistling lives, which Victoria Stitch was incredibly angry about. It's all about her striving to become queen, basically.
Fantastic. And this is because your previous series, the Isadora Moon, the Mirabelle, the Emerald series, which are all in that world of Isadora Moon, they are aimed at slightly younger readers, I believe. This is a middle grade book, isn't it? What else is different about Victoria Stitch compared to those books?
Yeah, this is my Victoria Stitch world is a completely different universe to Isadora Moon, and they are for 9 to 12, sort of technically that's what they're aimed at, so it's quite a jump up from Isadora. I think you wouldn't actually read Isadora probably and then move straight on to Victoria Stitch. Actually, there's like a bit of a gap between them, but yeah, it was a whole different beast writing a middle grade compared to the young fiction, the Isadora Moons.
Well, let's talk about that, because this Victoria Stitch has been a long time coming. And folks, like I said, I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can check it out. But if you go to Harriet's website, there's a blog post there called Creating Victoria Stitch, and it takes you through the whole process of it. And I think this has taken longer than any other series you've done. You started working on this when you were 19. Tell us where Victoria came from.
Yeah, I created Victoria Stitch when I was on my art foundation course. So she's always been there in the background. I've always known I really wanted to get a book published about Victoria Stitch. So yeah, she's always been in the background. And over the years, she's developed in the background while I was doing other stuff. She's kind of always been developing. There was one point when I was drawing her all in black and pink, and that's actually what inspired Isadora Moon, the visual for Isadora. So yeah, Victoria Stitch inspired Isadora Moon in a way, and Victoria Stitch also, she used to have Pink Rabbit. So Pink Rabbit is Isadora Moon's little sidekick, but actually he started out as Victoria Stitch's. So yeah, they are sort of interlinked, but they're completely different worlds.
And what was it about this character that made you stick to it for so long? Because as you say, Isadora Moon came along and you got that wonderful sort of clash of the dark and the gothic and the bright pink, which lends itself so brilliantly to younger readers. My daughter's in her 20s now, but I know she that sort of thing, whoosh, immediately attracted to it. That kind of almost Tim Burton-esque kind of aesthetic to it as well. But what is it about Victoria Stitch that A, made you think, I'm not ready to do this yet, and B, made you keep it on the back burner and didn't just abandon it and get on with something else?
I think Well, I think it's because the first Victoria Stitch book I did was a picture book, but Victoria Stitch doesn't actually lend herself well to picture books. It was quite a dark, gothic sort of picture book, which I created on my art foundation course, and it's not something that would actually be published as a picture book, sort of commercially anyway. So I feel like I had to find the right, the right sort of
tone,
level of
tone, maybe.
And level of sort of writing for her. And over the years, the world that she comes from developed and was sort of building. Because when I first created her, she was actually just sort of some random naughty little fairy type character. And then over the years, I started to think about, well, where she actually came from. And she developed into a whiskling, which are creatures I've invented. She was a fairy. I was obsessed with fairies when I was younger. So, sorry, I might have lost the thread of the question now.
No, that's all cool. Because I know what this is like. I've got a project that I spent about 12 years working on, and it was this thing that it's always in the back. It becomes an obsession. It becomes something that you kind of feel that if you rush into it, you might get it wrong, but you have to let it simmer in the background. You have to do other things and then come back to it, because in some ways, it being your passion project, you just want to get it right. Does that feel right to you?
Yes, that's actually exactly right. I think I didn't dare to start it because it was just so important to me. I wanted to get it perfect that I didn't start it for ages. I actually was surprised that I started it when I did, because I was actually thinking, it's probably something I'll do in later life when I'm ready to do it, and and then I'll have the skills to make it, exactly how I want. But actually what happened was, I think I'd done 6 Isadora Moon books. And at that point, my publisher, Oxford University Press, my editor said, actually, we don't need any more Isadora Moon at the moment. Do you have any other ideas? And I said, I don't actually. I've just got this one idea, but it's, it's a whole different thing. And it's a big book and a big, all this, world I want to create. And she was like, oh, well, write that then. And I was sort of thinking, I can't just start writing that. But she basically gave me the nudge to just write it, just do it if that's what you want to do.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So that's how it actually started.
And that thing of wanting it to be perfect, I think as, writers and illustrators, I don't think we ever make anything that is absolutely perfect, because perfection is it's a bit scary, it's a bit intimidating. So how were you, having been given that nudge by a publisher, were you worried about getting it wrong? And how did you overcome that kind of fear?
I think I was worried about getting it wrong. But I think over the years, I've kind of learned that if you don't start something, it sort of never actually really develops. And if you start it, then it starts becoming something that you didn't even realize it necessarily was going to become.
Yeah.
I think if you start something, then more ideas come.
Yeah.
You see what you're sort of exercising the muscle, and actually it makes it more and more. I'm not articulating this very well, but I know what I mean.
I know what you mean. It's that thing it's kind of perfect in your head, but there's a fear that if you start putting it on paper, you get it wrong. But actually what you discover is there are more possibilities there than you could have dreamed of when it was just in your head, that kind of thing. Stuff
starts appearing that you didn't, if you just start. But I mean, I will say, I do look back at all my books. There'll be something in them, probably a few things that I'll be like, I wish I'd done that differently now. And I wish I'd, that illustration, I've actually improved now. And but I think I've kind of learned to just accept that now and just be like, well, I wouldn't have got to book 3 if I hadn't started book 1. Exactly. And I'm really pleased with my book 3 illustrations. So I wouldn't have got there, though, if I hadn't done book 1, even though now there's some things in book 1 which I should have done differently, sort of thing.
Yep, that's the life, though, isn't it? So let's talk about the world building, because you mentioned the Whisklings, which is a brilliant name, and you've moved on from kind of fairy, and you've created your own rules, your own world. Does that, in some way, in some ways it's harder because you're not taking a concept that people already know, say fairies or vampires or whatever, and you're giving them a new name. But does that in some way give you more freedom as well to sort of create your own rules and your own world?
I think so, yeah. It took me so long to come up with that Whistling name, because it's so hard to think of like a new name.
Yeah.
But I think it does give you more freedom if you're not trapped in by sort of something that already exists. If they've just been fairies, then I think, people already have preconceived ideas of fairies. So I think it does give you a bit more.
Yeah, because there are rules and conventions that you have to follow with fairies and vampires generally. But if you've got Whisklings, you can make up your own rules, and it's your thing as well. It's suddenly, unique to you, which must be really satisfying. Yeah,
I think that was the thing. I've always wanted to create something that was kind of very much my own world. And I'd be happy to write books like in Whistlingwood, to be honest, for the rest of my, and obviously Isadora world and all that. But, I don't necessarily actually feel the need to branch out anymore into any other worlds or anything. I'm happy to just develop that one world now, actually.
Brilliant. Because you mentioned that this is a trilogy. Does that mean Victoria's story is wrapped up, or do you see this as ongoing? Will there be new adventures or side adventures? Because I know that the Mirabelle and Emerald series sort of came out of Isadora Moon, didn't they? So is that the plan with Victoria Stitch, sort of, taking other characters and working with them? Or can you not talk about that yet?
So I finished, I've done the trilogy now, and I would love to do more books, middle grade books in the Victoria Stitch world. I do have an idea for a book 4, but I'm not actually working on that at the moment. I did actually need a little break after I'd finished the 3, because it was so intense doing, I think I was doing 7 young fictions in the Isadora Moon world, and then also Victoria Stitch on top for about 3 years. Or no, I don't know how long, but it was very intense, and I think I just needed a little breather after that. So but I do have loads of ideas. There's nothing official yet, but I 100% definitely want to do more in Whistling world, maybe even maybe even something between Isadora and Victoria Stitch, maybe age group, but set in Whistlingwood. But I've got loads of ideas still for Whistlingwood.
Fantastic. And you mentioned earlier that you're moving from young readers to middle grade. What were the big challenges there in that adapting to that new writing style?
It's just so much longer, I think. Well, no, it's not just that. It's a more complicated, like you've got to have a more complicated story, obviously, and you can go much deeper with the characters, which was really satisfying. Like I really enjoy doing that. But I think it's definitely a lot more to think about. I did find it quite difficult writing book 1 because I'd never done anything. I'd never written one that long before. So it was very, very different.
Can you recall the word count?
So my first draft was something like 110,000 words. Right. I was like, this is an epic, but it's not. I think it's the actual book's maybe 40k, so it cut down a lot. Yeah. And I actually really enjoyed cutting it down. Okay. Quite like doing that, like editing all the words out.
Was it just that it... Sorry, go.
You realise how much stuff you don't actually need,
right,
when you actually do that.
I was going to ask, what did you cut? But excellent stuff. Well, let's go back to where it all started. And I believe for you were inspired by an author and illustrator visiting your school. Was it James Mayhew? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was actually when I was about 15. And in my head, the story is that he visited my school. And I think it's just easier to say that when I'm on school visits. But I forget that what actually happened was is that at the time, James Mayhew lived in the same town as my school, and there was an exhibition of his work on at the local gallery or museum, and our art teachers took us to see it just in an art lesson. We walked into town to look at it, and I really connected. I love his work, but I really connected. It really resonated with me, that kind of artwork, compared to, the sort of fine artists and things that you always learn about at school. And my teacher organised for me to actually go and interview him in his house, which was amazing. And James Mayhew was so kind, and he gave up, his time to talk to me and show me his work. And I did a project on his work. But that was the first time I realised that being an author and an illustrator was a job that you could actually do. Like, I had no idea before then. So yeah, that was how it started. And as soon as I realised that, I knew that was where I wanted to channel sort of my creativity. Like, because before that, I sort of thought, if you want to do art, you do art at uni, you do like fine art or whatever. I had no idea you could specialise like that. And then I knew that was what I wanted to do.
Brilliant. And am I right in thinking he actually became your tutor at one point?
Yes, he did. Yes. When I did my MA in children's book illustration later on, at Cambridge, he was my tutor. Yeah, which was amazing. Yeah,
brilliant.
Really cool.
Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. Now, you mentioned that this happened roughly when you were about 15, which is always a big turning point. I remember when I was 15, you talk about options and making big life decisions and setting off on a course. Now, I also saw you sort of confess, and I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of, because I sort of did it too. But you were still playing with dolls when you were 15, and your parents were a bit worried, and I was still sort of playing with action figures at that age. And I think this is something that creative people, we do have this. They say arrested development, but I like to think we still have a very active imagination. But can you talk about that and sort of the concerns that your parents might have had?
Yeah, I mean, actually, my teachers sometimes, I think a parents evening would say, Harriet needs to grow up. Because, I would always have a little mascot character that I would like to take around with me and take photos of and make little things for. And actually, that was one thing that inspired my whistling world. Actually, I did start out by having a little whistling mascot character. But who actually still lives in my castle doll's house just there. But I was very much still slow to mature and still playing with toys, basically, when I was. I mean, to be fair, I still do that, actually. I'm not going to lie.
No, me neither. I mean, when we're recording this, listeners, I've just been to a convention where my son and I just walked around looking at all the toys and the Lego. It was the greatest time ever. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And then I want to talk about as well, you went on to do work experience, I believe, for Egmont, and you came up with something there that became something quite special. The coin.
Yes. Yes, I did. I did work experience in the summer holidays. I think it was when I was on my MA, maybe. At Egmont, and also Macmillan as well. And that was really interesting because I was doing the work experience as the designer, I think. And I remember as I was doing that, sort of realizing this isn't what I want. Like, I want to be the illustrator or the author, not just because that's the way my brain works. And like, I knew I wasn't good at the job I was meant to be doing. I think I was actually an awful work experience person. But anyway, yes, I created the Egmont coin, which they put in the front. I don't know, they don't, because they're Farshore now, aren't they? So they don't have that, but they put it in the front of every, I think, chapter book or something.
Yeah.
But it was a little sketch I'd done, and they saw it, and they wanted to use it. So I got commissioned for that. And I can't 100% exactly remember it all because it feels like quite a long time ago. But I did do the Egmont coin, which was really cool.
That must have been amazing, though, just to see that in the cover of a book.
Yeah. So it was in the inside, in the inside pages. I think there was just a little bit, where they have all the info just in the first page or two, a little bit about how Egmont was founded or something.
It was it was a centenary, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah,
brilliant. Absolutely.
That might have been my first bit of published work, I think.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, look, we're obsessed with writing habits on this podcast and workspace as well. And also, again, on your blog, I saw pictures of your workspace, which looked very neat and tidy, though I believe you tidied it up for the purposes of the photograph. But particularly as an illustrator as well as an author, how do you divide up your workspace between the illustrating bit and the author bit, or do the two things kind of merge?
Where I'm sitting now is my Mac, which is where I would do all my writing. Mm-hmm. And then just over there against the wall is my desk, where is all my painting stuff. Right. So that's where I'll sit over there when I'm doing drawing. And then I'll sit here if I'm doing writing. And it just depends what I've got to do that day, basically.
Brilliant. And is it always the visuals that come first that inspire the words for you?
I think I'm very character driven. So if I'm going to write about a character, I always have to have my character in mind first. And I'll always know what they look like. So I will always have drawn the character first, I think, or I'll have a very strong idea of what they look like. Then I might write a story about them. And then I would go back and illustrate the actual story. So I would say it would always start with a visual for me.
Right. Okay. And when does the world building come in? Once you've got your character, are you building the world around them, or is it evolving as you write?
I think it depends. So with Isadora Moon, I think I specifically wanted to create a world all in black and pink. Mm-hmm. I think that was actually a real driving force of creating Isadora Moon, was the fact I wanted to do black. I love black and pink. And I just love it together. I really wanted to do a world. So I thought a vampire and a fairy would be the sort of perfect mix of gothic and fairy, sparkly pink. So that was very much driven, I think, by the world. I think Victoria Stitch was probably more driven by character, and then I created a world around her, I think.
Fantastic. And are you drawing every day, writing every day, or like you said, you were taking a break after an intense period, but are you still sort of keeping your hand in every day?
Yeah, so when I say taking a break, I'm taking a break from Victoria Stitch, but I'm doing a middle grade, basically. Right. But I am still writing all of the Isadora, Emerald, and Mirabelle. So I'm doing a lot of writing at the moment because I'm doing those. But I have been working on new ideas. So I have been doing some writing for that and some drawings. I'm trying to keep trying to practice my drawing, because I realised I do so much writing nowadays. And that's funny, because I started as more of an illustrator, and now I feel like I seem to do more writing nowadays. So I want to work on my illustration a bit more.
It's amazing to hear you say that. That's like hearing, musicians saying, I still have to practice my skills. I mean, you do have to keep your hand in, don't you? It's not one of these things, well, I've learnt that now. You have to keep developing and challenging yourself as an artist, don't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think so anyway. I definitely do. Right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, this all sounds amazing. Folks, Victoria Stitch, Dark and Sparkling, and the first books, Bad and Glittering, Free and Famous, those are out there, and there's going to be more to come as well. And as I said, I will put a link in the show notes so you can check out how Victoria Stitch evolved as a character. It's absolutely fascinating. It's inspirational stuff. Harriet, thanks so much for speaking to us today, and hope to speak to you again very soon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been really nice.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Gosh, I tell you what, 2 million books. I mean, they always say that you start writing children's books and you got this dream. It happens to every parent when you're sitting there reading books every night and you start thinking, and then like me, I started kind of making up stories. We all do that, don't we? We kind of like, I can do better than this. And you start making up stories, and then the kids start asking you for the stories every night of the character you make up. And then you start thinking, maybe I could write a book series. And then what happens is you start writing a children's book, and then everyone tells you, children's books, most competitive market. It's so few of them, mate. And then you hear stories like Harriet, 2 million books. And you just think, what am I going to listen to?
Yeah. What I love about these books as well, though, is, as I sort of said early on, my daughter, when she was about 11, 12, would have loved these. That whole thing, it's a little bit Wednesday Addams, it's pink and black, it's a bit gothic, it's a bit weird, which people will tell you, that might be a bit niche. But as we've discovered time and time again, niche is the new big. If you can find your tribe, there are going to be girls all over, and boys all over the world, who are going to look at those illustrations and go, that's for me. It's weird, like me. I love that. Give me more.
Honestly, I think nowadays as well, I think kids are drawn more to that kind of material. I mean, the amount of kids now, I've got my finger on the pulse, Mark, because, I've got stuff. Anime.
Yeah.
And not just, and there's and it's dark. Dark. Demon, what's that one? Demon Slayer. Nice little name for her. But like my daughter, when she was like 9 or 10, she's like into Demon Slayer. And I was thinking, what was I like watching or reading when I was 9 or 10? It was kind of like
Rupert the Bear.
Actually,
right? I'll tell you what, Rupert the Bear is seriously weird. Have you go back and read it. Lots of folk horror elements in Rupert the Bear is very, very strange indeed.
So I think kids are definitely attracted to things that aren't mainstream.
Yeah.
That are a bit, like you say, gothic-y, a bit scary. I mean, it goes back to the Grimm's tales, doesn't it? I mean, all of those, when you actually like go back to the fairy tales, they were like and Disney
I think the lesson is just because you think it's not mainstream, just because you think, hang on, I'm a bit different. The things that I like, no one else seems to like, kind of thing. Out of 8 billion people in the world, there's going to be lots of people who like your stuff, so don't try and please everyone. Just be true to your own self and write something that you're passionate about, and you are going to find that readership eventually.
Now it sounds very interesting, because this is a subject that seems to be hot potatoes right now. It's come up a lot. I was even coaching about it in the academy the other day, perfectionism, and Harriet mentioned about this as well. And it's interesting, because the one thing I was coaching on was this idea that perfectionism doesn't exist. Like, there's no such thing as perfect. You can write you think you can write the perfect book, but I promise you, once you publish it, you will find at least one word you can change to make it better, and so and so and so, right? It goes on and on. But the problem I have with perfectionism is when it's the killer of dreams, when it stops people from actually going for it. Because, and I think, I don't know if I've mentioned this story many years ago on the podcast, but it's worth repeating. And we got a bit of a music theme going through today's podcast as well. But I remember once a friend of mine, he was a phenomenal guitarist, like one of these wonder kids, could do amazing things with guitars. And he entered the Guitarist of the Year competition, those kind of rock magazines you get in W. Smith and and he entered Guitarist of the Year one year and won it at like age 18 or 19, like crazy phenomenal. Everyone was like, wow. And 5 years on from winning it, I remember bumping into him and I said, how's it going? Like what's happened since that amazing accolade in the world of rock music and guitar? And he said, I'm still working on the first album. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm just not happy with it. Just not happy. And basically, the story of his life before winning was he just wasn't quite happy enough with his work. Winning it didn't even change anything. It's like winning a Grammy didn't change anything. He was so stuck in perfection that he kept on chasing the golden goose. He kept on chasing the end of the rainbow. And he never released a single song. And I stand back today and I think, that's the problem with perfectionism. It will, if you, and anyone listen to this who has this sense of, actually, that's me. I've been waiting for the one more, in music, it's like when I get the new guitar, it's always something external to you. Like, it's like a workman. When I get my new lightweight hammer and whatever it is in our work, when I get my new pen or my better notebook or, or even when I've done that course I've been in, once I've got my master's in writing, then I will become a good writer. It's BS, folks. Stop it, because we never ever will reach perfection. So I say to everyone in the academy, strive to be nearly perfect. Don't strive for perfectionism, but let go of it for God's sakes, because if you don't let go of it, you will die never creating anything that you put out into the world to share. And it's all imperfect. Anything that has ever been put out in the world, it's always imperfect. Always.
It's very liberating once you realize that as well, because you just get on with it. It becomes part of your job. And your friend, winning that award would have made it 10 times worse, because suddenly there's an expectation. You see those things that come out, Young Novelist of the Year. These are the hot talents to watch. Can you imagine what that must be like, the expectation on your shoulders, once you've been named as one of these kind of hot talents to watch kind of thing. I
saw a thing on Facebook the other day. Occasionally I see something decent on Facebook, and there was this funny meme about does anyone, I must try to see if I can find it, but it's awful trying to explain a meme, but it basically has a timeline of someone's life, and it says like years, 8 to 16 child prodigy, ages 16 to 32, everyone catches up, and then ages 32 onwards, a weirdo in your home studio.
It's true, isn't it? It's true. Do you have that thing where, because at middle school, I was the one who was good at art and I was the one who was good at writing.
Yeah.
And then when I went to secondary school, I wasn't even in the top 10 when it came to art and writing. Everyone could write, and you suddenly think, oh, I'm not special anymore. But, the thing is, it's one thing having people say, you're good at this, keep going, which I had. I had very good teachers like that. But you have got to put the hours in. You've got to, we can talk about this.
We're going to talk about this in the extended, folks. Yeah, absolutely. This is a whole fascinating subject, which we will delve into. Let's jump into workspaces as well, because this is an interesting one, isn't it? It's interesting, having talked to Harriet, that she has her two zones, if you like. Yeah. She has a writing spot and her drawing spot, which is great illustration spot, and I love that. And I have my own dedicated studio where I'm recording this now, which is where I do my work, my writing, my music, all the rest of it. And then, other places in different parts, of the house where we do other hobbies or things like that. We have a puzzle table in our house now, dedicated.
Of course you do.
Yeah. Do you know what it is? Do you know what's really cool about it? It's the dining table that we used to have when I was like 4 years old.
Oh, that's nice.
It's come all the way over from England.
Is your name scratched on the table?
It has. It's an absolute wrecked table. It's one of those beautiful art wrecked tables. And I thought, you just don't want to get let go of that stuff because it has a lot of nostalgia. There's like tens of thousands of meals, do you know what I mean, that happened on that table with my dad passed away earlier this year, so it has even more meaning because that table has a lot of, nostalgia for me. So having a space, now a lot of people say, oh, it's so nice to have your own writing studio, and of course a lot of people's writers have dreams to have their own writing space, but it's not about just having a dedicated building or a shed at the end of your garden like Joanne Harris where you go and write every day. It's just as much about having even just a designated space, even if it's the corner of a table in your house where you do your writing, or that little table over there is where you do your art, because there's a lot of science behind this that says that if you create a space which is dedicated to that one thing, when you sit in that space you become that role.
Yes, I can attest to that. I mean, I'm very lucky now. I've got an office and I've got a desk there that I use for writing, and this is the podcasting desk. Although actually, when I'm collaborating on a project at the moment, and because we have Zoom meetings, story meetings over Zoom, I write that on this one. So it's funny. That over there is for Project A, and this desk is for Project B. It's funny.
Yeah.
But when I was writing on my commute, the train seat, and there were certain seats that I preferred over others.
Certain seats, when you sat in them, nothing came out of really bad days of writing. Or
it had to be. You know, Southwest trains and what have you. You know, you get blocks of 4 and blocks of 2. Yeah. It had to be a block of 2 where I would sit by the window because I'm going the whole way to Waterloo. Okay.
Yeah. Didn't have to stare at anyone.
Exactly. All I've got is the back of a chair in front of me.
Chair.
And the window.
And a copy of the Metro.
No.
Right.
No,
wedged down the side of the seat. Yeah.
Exactly. Like a kind of shower curtain. Yeah. And so I'm hemmed in by everyone. And I was very lucky because I used to get on at Ewell West, which I think was the last station where you could be guaranteed a seat pretty much every day unless there was some disaster on the trains. So I would be hemmed in all the way, headphones on, head down. Like, and that was it. I was in the zone. Exactly.
Okay, here's a question. Here's a quick question.
Go on.
How many times did you get the sense that the person sitting next to you was reading what you were writing?
I had one kid say to me, he was nudging me, and I was writing, this was a film that was never made, and it was an argument between a couple, and it was very sweary and sexual. And this guy was reading bits out loud, and he was loving it. And I'm like, I just had to close the lid. And then coming home one night, I was sat next to this drunk, aggressive guy who objected.
Not a good combo.
To my elbows moving as I typed, and he kept waking up, swearing at me and threatening to smash the laptop. So I thought, okay, tonight I'm going to take the night off.
I'm just gonna dwell on my story for now.
Exactly.
But he's going to be in it, a future story, and I'm going to knock him off. I saw a great, again, another random meme today. It said, this thriller writers will like this one, crime writers. It simply said. Sorry, it just makes me laugh every time I think about it. Writing, because it's better than murder.
Yes.
It's like, honestly.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
When
100% true.
When you're on the train, get in that seat. The reason why you were limited by seats as well, because on Southwest trains, a lot of them are already taken up by chewing gum. So you can't take those anyway, right? There's a big black, what used to be patches. Chewing gum, and now it's black hole patches, nice, on the back of the jeans. But there is something about that spot. It's almost like the routine of writing isn't just about writing. It's about how you write, where you write, when you write.
It's a headspace. So I found little spots. So in my lunch break, I would go to the Curzon Cinema, the Curzon Soho, because they had a basement there, it was like the Star Wars cantina. It had all these little nooks and crannies where you could sit for an hour or more and have a cup of tea and a packet of chocolate-covered raisins or yogurt-covered raisins when I was dieting, and sit for an hour and write. The other place was when Orion moved to the new premises, they had these little work areas where you could sit down, and I'd find a quiet corner. So you'd find these little places, and you'd look around, you think, okay, this is the headspace, and once you've been there a couple of times, your mind just goes, okay, click into gear, we're into writing mode now. So I could get into that. And I have the same thing when I come to my desk each morning, that desk there. Whereas I have the freedom now to shut that door and write. I wrote for 2 hours this morning, and just get on with it without interruption or drunk people threatening to thump me. Occasionally. When
you talk about the Star Wars canteen, is that the scene in the first movie?
Yeah.
There's all. Yeah. So, because when you said that and you said, I'm in Soho and I go down to the basement.
Yeah.
And it's like the Star Wars canteen. I thought you were making a comment on the kind of seedy people that hang out at the basements of cinemas.
Actually, you get a lot of actors, quite famous actors, come down.
What I wanted to actually ask is, was there a woman there with 3 breasts. Was that in Star
No,
Wars?
that's not Star Wars.
You
No,
see,
that's Total Recall.
God, how did I get that messed up? I thought, I can't imagine George Lucas would have done that.
No.
Sorry, I was just going back to nostalgia in my childhood, and I haven't thought about that for 25, 30 years.
Yeah, Wretched Hive of scum and villainy, but they do a nice cup of tea.
Brilliant.
What are you on today?
Soho's a place now. So
I once got propositioned by a prostitute in Soho. Have I ever told you that story?
No. Here we go. See, I've started us off on one now.
It was.
Should probably be in the deep dive.
This was while Robot Overlords was in post-production, and I had 2 Christmas parties to go to. Get me. One was the visual effects company. It was their Christmas party, and then there was a publishing party across town. And I took a shortcut. This was like a Friday night. I took a shortcut through Soho. I'm going down, and I know all the back alleys. I was going down one of the back alleys, and this very attractive woman stepped out of the shadows and said, "Looking for a good time, mister?" And
oh my God.
As cool as a cucumber, I said, "No, thank you very much," and shuffled away.
No, thank you, Miss Patterson. No, thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you are walking down the back alleys of Soho, I mean, what do you expect, Mark? Really? But
only happened once.
That's
clearly you don't have it anymore.
You obviously don't get out enough.
How do we digress? How do we get
I don't know. I'm sorry. It was the woman with the 3 breasts. I apologise to everyone. I'm really sorry. Let's get back on track.
Yes.
The next thing that we were talking about, we're playing with toys. And they said, "Oh, no, you see, what am I talking about? We can't do this."
Why not? What,
do you not get the link?
No. What?
Oh, okay. You're too innocent. Anyway, carry on. Everyone else is laughing their heads off on the...
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah, fair enough. Oh my God, it's so childish. I was just going to say, look at the toys on my shelf, although I've kept them in the boxes sensibly now.
Well, you and Linwood. I mean, Linwood gave us his tour of his Thunderbirds plane or something. So what's on your... For people... sorry. For stuff on... People not watching this on YouTube, what is on your... I can see a stormtrooper.
There's a big stormtrooper up there.
A Barbie-sized stormtrooper.
Barbie-sized stormtrooper. There's a little Lego Mandalorian next to him. There's an Airfix Spitfire there. There's a whole selection of Star Wars figures, which, to be fair, my kids get me for Christmas and birthdays and things.
Yeah.
I'm over the moon because I've got a Werner Herzog action figure. So, because, he was in The Mandalorian for a few episodes. And Werner Herzog is this incredible existential director and maker of documentaries who speaks like this and talks about, contemplates the infinite sadness of life. And there he is as an action figure. Wow. I've got the thing from the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is actually a piggy bank, and I've got a couple of Terry Pratchett figurines up there, and more Lego, and there's more Lego over there. So
yeah. Can I ask a request, Mark?
Yes.
I want you from this moment on, for the rest of the duration of the life of this podcast, to speak in that voice. It's absolutely brilliant.
So Werner, I want to see the baby. So Mandalorian fans will be laughing now. I want to see the baby. He's great. I love Werner Herzog. He's brilliant. He's one of these guys who's he was in the first Jack Reacher film as well, I think. It was the first one or the second one.
Is this like a Hitchcock type thing where he kind of just gets in on the back of it, or?
No, he's weirdly when he started out, it was this intense, I think he's Bavarian director who, has been shot at and because he used to work with Klaus Kinski, who tried to kill him. They did a film called Aguirre, Wrath of God, where they were, Herzog had to get protection to save himself from Kinski, who was off his rocker. Wow. And there's a very famous clip of Mark Kermode talking to Werner Herzog, and someone takes a pot shot at him with an air rifle. He gets shot. He's bleeding. And Kermode says, "Oh, my God, you've been shot. What's happening?" And he's like, "No, it's not a real bullet. I've been shot worse than that." And they just carry on with the interview. It's incredible.
It makes our Linwood Barclay moment of a guy being arrested on the front of his lawn whilst we were interviewing him sound like kindergarten play. Really?
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, workspaces.
Madness. No, we're done with workspaces, Mark. We'll move on. We played with our toys.
Toys,
Okay,
yes,
folks.
toys. Look, I mean, this is it. Toys. I just want to say
Twilight
toys.
Zone episode, absolute Twilight Zone. I love it.
Keeps me young. It keeps me young. It keeps me, you know, I think not growing up is an essential part of being a creative.
Do you know one thing I've always loved? I've loved this saying. Someone said it to me when I was about 25 and I still had my Beano collection. They said to me, don't be childish, but always be childlike. And I love that. And I think we should all, like, toys aren't just for kids. Like, let's be honest, when most of us, you know, who are lucky enough to become parents, you know, we get the opportunity to pull a Lego out from the attic or from the basement, and we get to sit with our little kids and start playing, even if it's like, you know, Mega Blocks. I think that's what we start with, like when they're really young. But you're like, oh, I really miss this. This is like nostalgia. And I think that we should embrace play. I mean, it's just play, just because they're kids' toys. I mean, we know what's going to be the biggest selling toy this Christmas. It's going to be Weird Barbie, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
And who's going to buy Weird Barbie? It'll probably be all of the
people in their 30s and 40s.
People in their 30s and 40s that went along thinking they're taking their kids to this Barbie movie that they're going, okay, whatever, and then realize it was actually made for them. And yeah, so I think, you know, embrace it. Like, everyone should have. I mean, look, I've got my monkey. Sits on top. He sits on top, and I've got the whole set. He's the baby. I've got the mum, who's like big, and then the dad takes up an entire armchair. He's massive. I'll bring him in.
Story? Where'd you get them? What's the story? That is a loved cuddly toy.
That is a very loved
it?
monkey. So this okay. I don't want to promote him on the podcast, but I got into Jellycat, right? Which is
Gotcha,
there's something about Jellycats. They're really fun, and I just became obsessed with them. So we ended up buying a lot of Jellycat type toys. And I always wanted a monkey when I was a kid. In fact, I had one of those talking, you know, the monkey that you strap around your neck.
Yeah.
I had the squeak, and I used to do ventriloquism as a kid. That was me.
Another piece of the puzzle falls into place.
I know, right? And so I always wanted a monkey as a pet growing up. So the next best thing was getting monkey kind of, do you know what they call these in Canada and in America? People in England, are you ready for this? We call them in England cuddly toys, right? In North America, they call them stuffies.
Stuffies, yeah.
Stuffies. I'd never heard that before. Yeah. So this is my stuffy, and I've got a collection of them. But for me, it keeps you kind of young. It keeps you connected to that innocence of youth. And also for me, you know what it does for me, Mark, is it keeps me connected to that reminder that we have infinite imagination. As adults, we get our imagination crushed by society, by teachers that tell us we shouldn't do that, we don't dream big. And I've always remained connected about dreaming big, thinking of crazy ideas and big stuff. And that's why I have little toys kind of dotted around the house. Is to keep reminding me. I've got a big jar of marbles. I mean, there's a little jar there. I've got a massive jar.
I've been looking for those. I've lost those.
Right? I won those off you at school in the alley. My China big un. But again, marbles for me goes back to my youth, where you'd rush out at playtime because some bloke, I remember him, Michael Litton, if you're still there, Michael, he was the marble king. He would always have these. Like, he was the conker king and the marble king. He'd crush your conkers, like he'd bake them, and then he was brilliant at marbles. He would win all. And if people are wondering what I'm talking about here,
did you play marbles over a drain? You know, those drain
marbles
covers.
Over drain covers. We had in our school.
What were
Mark,
we thinking?
We had the
botulism.
St. Peter's in I know. Look, here we are. We made it. Like,
we're
guys,
fine.
Out of date yogurt, 6 months. So what? Go for it. Eat that yogurt in the fridge from last year. But the point is that marbles connects me back to my youth, because in our primary school, elementary school, we had this most amazing edge of the playground that was like trees and mud, and the mud would bake in, all the kids would walk on it. And so there was all these intricate little places your marble would get stuck behind tree roots and stuff, and it'd get in gullies, and if you got in the gully you were done for, because they'd just roll their china big un and get you. I mean, I don't know who else played marbles, but for me, I think once, unfortunately, one kid swallowed one or choked on one, and then it was like, banned. And one kid hurt their thumb on playing conkers, banned. And some kid got stuck on, do you remember those Red Devils? Do you remember those, the Jawbreakers? They were like gobstoppers. They were like cinnamon hot.
They were dangerous. They were dangerous, but serious joking hazard.
Somebody got, it's just like, but I think we should bring back marbles. I don't know if you can even play them at school now, but I don't even know if North America, maybe people in North America can tell me, do they understand anything I'm saying today? Because in England, this was like a tradition in the school playgrounds, playing marbles. It was like, and you'd win marbles off each other. And it was like childhood life.
Did you play flixies with cards? I was good at that.
No.
Right. So, you know, the Star Wars bubblegum cards and Panini training cards. Training. So we'd go in the shelter, you know, those shelters they built for children, and you'd stand at one end and you'd flick cards, and whoever got closest to the wall got both cards. And I tell you what, I had a wrist action like no one else. Oh, I was the man at that. Yeah.
You had the best wrist in the high school. That's brilliant. Oh my gosh, we could do a whole podcast on
yes, this is supposed to be a writing podcast.
Yeah. Okay, how do we get back? Okay, I'll tell you how we get back, folks. I'm going to put you out of your misery and tell you that in the extended version, it gets even better. Right? Gets even better. We're going to play with toys. No, what we're going to do is in the extended is we're going to actually deep dive on something that we think is really, really important. And this is something that Mark was discussing with Harriet about this idea of the importance of why, as writers, we need to get into the habit of writing regularly in the same way that a musician does scales. And Harriet said, you know, I have to keep drawing to keep good at it. We're going to deep dive on this, and we're going to start to reveal some of the really important reasons as to why it's not something that you should be thinking about doing. It's an absolute must if you want to become the best writer you can absolutely be, and not just become a prolific writer, but a writer that writes for the rest of their life and puts out a life work of books. So we're really going to go deep on this. So do join us in the extended. Join John Day, who'll be listening. John, our new patron of the week. If you would like to listen to the extended, there are two ways you can do it. Firstly, come to the academy.bestsellerexperiment.com, and join the VIP list. And to sign up for the Academy, when you're in the Academy, you get access to all of these extended episodes, plus a ton more. Or join up to become a patron of this podcast, which we very much appreciate as well. So we'll look forward to seeing you on the other side. So welcome to the extended podcast, folks. I'm glad you're still with us in the twilight zone. We're promised to focus a bit more now, Mark. Okay, we'll get into the deep stuff now. I really enjoyed that. That was great. I love it when we go off on one on the the regulars. People must be thinking, by the way, when they listen to us, the people that don't listen to the extendeds because they haven't been like you folks out there that have been kind enough to kind of, you know, sign up, be an Academy member, become a patron. They must wonder what on earth goes on behind closed doors, right? I mean, like, what if that's what they talk about in the regular? What on earth do they start riffing on? But today we want to talk about something that we actually, didn't we? Before we started recording, Mark, we started talking about this and we had to stop and say, no, let's stop talking about this. Let's record this in the extended. There was something that you said to Harriet, which then sparked this idea. And you said something, she said, I have to keep drawing because if I don't, then, you know, my drawing skills start to go down. And then you said, it's a bit like playing the scales on the piano. And then I thought about a guy called James that used to live next door to me when I did a year exchange in Montreal, when I went to uni out in Montreal. And he was doing a music degree. And James would rarely be in his room. He'd pop back about 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night. And I'd catch him for maybe half an hour and he'd always be exhausted. And then one night I said, James, you know, how's the music degree going? And he's like, well, he said, I've only got a few hours of lectures a day. I said, what are you doing for the rest of the time? He said, practicing. I said, where'd you practice? He said, I'm down in the basement where there's a piano and I have to practice. And I said, how many hours a day do you practice? And he said, between 6 to 8 hours a day. And I'm like, you are joking. I said, why do you have to practice that long? And he said to me, if I don't, I'll get worse. I'll lose my bit. Because he had reached such a high level of playing the piano that he convinced himself anyway that he had to practice. Now that's a bit of an extreme. We're not saying you have to write for 8 hours a day to retain your skills. But what it triggered for me was this idea. And it's a real challenge. This is a massive challenge for writers. So let's take Harriet and her drawing. When Harriet draws a picture, and I've done this, and you've probably done it as well, Mark, if you've got like sketchbooks and things, and you draw another picture 6 months later, you can look at the picture you drew 6 months before and go, God, that was so much better. Like I've really lost my edge. I really need to get back into it. So you can look at two pictures and you can instantly go, that is a much better drawing than that one. If I sit down to do scales on the piano and I haven't practiced for 3 months, if I've recorded myself playing the scales 3 months ago and then I record myself playing today, I'm like, oh my God, like I've really lost the edge on my scales. But here's the thing. When a writer sits down to write after not writing for 3 months, it's really hard to compare apples and apples because it's never apples and apples. Like everything you write is different. There's subjective things in there. There's so many different permutations. And so I've got a theory that because we don't in writing have a way of easily comparing whether our writing's getting better or worse over time. I mean, obviously it's easy to tell when you've written a book and 5 years later you read, but like, scales, you can tell even day to day if you're having a better day or a worse day. Yoga, great example. Yoga, you lie on your back and you do that one stretch and you go, oh my God, my glutes or whatever, my calf muscles are killing me today. It's like you can instantly gauge. And if you do yoga a lot, you get very fine. You know where you're at. You're like, oh, I'm way out of shape. So let's talk about this, Mark, because how do writers know that they're getting better or their writing's got worse because they haven't done it for a period of time?
I mean, I've written every day for about a year and a half now, so I've not had to confront that problem for a while. But I do know that when a little over 10 years ago, when I sat down to write the Robot Overlords novelization, which was the first, I'd written books before that had been published, that had been trunked, novels and stuff. But there was a part, I wasn't writing every day in that way necessarily. So you do second guess yourself all the time. You are thinking, does this work? Is this right? Whereas if you are doing it every day, you learn to love the process and you understand that this isn't your only opportunity to get it right. You will go back and you will fix things. But it is really, really tricky because it is such a subjective thing. You can listen to someone practicing scales and they either get it or they don't. Or if you hit a bum note, you hit a bum note. I think the thing to judge is whether or not you are able to enjoy the process of writing, knowing full well you're going to get stuff wrong. I mean, I'm starting the first draft of Woodville number 5 right now, this week. I've started this week. And I've had a struggle writing the opening scene. And I'm writing it now, and I still don't think it's the right one, but I'm doing it anyway because I've learned that it's going to change. It's going to, so I'm just getting stuff down. And enjoying the process and knowing that I'm going to break through at some point. At some point I'm going, that's it, So in a way, you're kind of judging yourself. You're trying to,
which is hard to do as well, right?
Really hard.
We're the worst people to judge ourselves with because we can't see the wood for the trees. We're the worst person to judge our work. But from what you're saying, it sounds like we know that if you write every day, your writing is going to get better.
No
It won't
question.
happen the next day, but it will get better. Like everything, it's like I said to my daughter the other day. She wants to improve her footy skills, her soccer skills, right? And I said, well, a really good way of measuring your ball control is like keepy uppies, like get a ball and see how many you can do in a row. And so she tried, she did 3 or 4, and the ball fell. Keepy uppies for those people who aren't footy fans. That's where you just get a football and you try and kick it in the air and you keep kicking it in the air until it hits the ground. So, and that's the kind of scales in some ways of playing football. And And you know, and I said, right, so you've now got your 4 is your personal best. I said, just because it fell doesn't mean you failed. It just means that 4 is your personal best. So can you get to 5? Try 5. And then she would try it and then, you know, get 5. Okay, well, you've done 5. And again, measuring. So for me, that the scales of writing is the 200 word challenge, because it got me thinking that so many people, not to bash NaNoWriMo, but a lot of people that do NaNoWriMo just do NaNoWriMo. They just write 50,000 words in November. And I thought to myself the other day, if you are that kind of person, it's a bit like sitting down in November and trying to play a piano concerto when you haven't played the piano between December and October. It doesn't work. It does work. You can write a book, but it's not going to be anywhere near as good as that book that you've written where you've done 200 words, 500 words, 1,000 words a day over a longer period of time.
I've got a great example for you as well. I'm reading, I don't know why it's taken me so long to get around to reading this, but the Terry Pratchett biography, A Life with Footnotes. I'm reading that at the moment, and it's phenomenal. It's really, really good, really entertaining read. But Terry he worked as a journalist, and then he worked as a press officer for nuclear power and what have you. But this is, here's a little extract that I found. I put this up on the BXP team as well. So when he started on his second novel, science fiction story, The Dark Side of the Sun, he said he was mostly chipping away at the book in evening sessions where he would set himself the target of writing 400 words, but occasionally applying himself to it more strenuously. In August 73, for example, during what was ostensibly a week off work he reported he was racing along with the novel with a heavily rewritten third draft at the rate of 3,000 words per day. Now, you see this all through the book. He moved house and he got married and he started a new job. There was a commute, and there was a time where he wasn't writing at all, and it might have fallen by the wayside. Every time he wanted to get back into writing, he would target himself 400 words a day, you know, and and by doing 400 words a day, he'd soon be doing those 3,000 a day. And it's absolutely fascinating. And that habit, that work ethic. I mean, Terry at his peak, I think in the mid 90s, he did like 2 Discworld books and like 3 children's books in a year. I mean, it was just incredible. You know, that work ethic paid off massively. And he had a job while he was doing this as well. And he had a young family and all sorts. So, that's someone who wrote when he was very young. I think his first novel, The Carpet People, he'd written when he was somewhere between 17 and 19. It was published when he was about 22, I think. Then he went away and did work and blah, 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 then came back to it. But each time he applied himself to get back into and it's the musician practicing scales. It's the actor learning their lines. It's, it's any kind of skill where you just need to practice. And, you know.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's really exciting to think that, you know, whilst most people have got their day job, and we're probably taking in the majority of people listening to us right now, they've got a day job and writing is something that they do in their spare time, sometimes as a hobby, an aspiration, you know. But it's kind of exciting to think that actually, if you do have a day job, and you have to squeeze your writing around that, you could be at an advantage in terms of building that writing habit, because you may only have half an hour a day to write. But if you can get those 200 words in every day, you're off to the races. But if you're taking, I mean, like you did, Mark, you know, if you get to take 6 months off work, or you quit your job to become a full-time writer, and suddenly you've got 24 hours in a day that you could write, that's actually a lot harder, because you're going to feel a lot guiltier if you're not spending 6 hours, 8 hours at the desk. So I think it's really encouraging for people to, you know, even if you're looking at becoming a full-time writer, get those 200 words down, like fit them around your busy day, your kids. I mean, we've seen on the Academy, we've seen people who've said, I don't have the time. There's no way I could write a book. And it's like, do you have 15, 20 minutes a day? Yeah. Okay. That's where you're going to write your book. It's where it's going to happen. And it's with stories going back to the beginning of time of people who, John Grisham, I always use as an example. He wrote, he got up half an hour earlier. He wrote before he went to his law office, and then he would have the most insane day, 12, 14, 16 hours. He still wrote his books, and that's how it all happened for him. So I just want to encourage anyone listening today that thinks, it's never going to happen. It can only happen if you start your scales, and that's your 200 word challenge. That's kind of the magic behind it. It gives you a target, it gives you something to look at. You can kind of compare your 200 words with 200 words you wrote a month ago if you want to try and get a bit of a snapshot, but it's not a science, because you might have had a bad writing day a month ago or bad writing day today. Again, there's so many variables, but just trust the process. The process is, if you sit down and you write on a regular basis, you will become a better writer. Your stories will be more entertaining, and you'll be more successful as an author, and guaranteed you will publish more books in your lifetime. I mean, it's all good stuff. Yes. Before we end this extended, we want to dive in and talk a little bit about Nautilus, Mark.
Right.
And the backstory
Change
to
the
this.
Subject, yes.
Yeah, the backstory to this is fascinating, because we've never really talked about this on the podcast, have we? But give us a quick overview as to how it all started.
Okay, so in 2015, just after the release of Robot Overlords, actually just around about the time it was coming out in the States, I did what they call the water bottle tour of Los Angeles, of Hollywood. It's called the water bottle tour because you do like a week of meetings with various people, and everywhere you go, they offer you bottled water, which you drink and then toss in the footwell of the passenger thing of your car. So they, accumulate. I actually ended up in downtown LA asking some cops, is there somewhere I can recycle these? So you go from meeting to meeting to meeting. And I went to Hollywood, with a smile and a bag full of original ideas. That was my first mistake. Hollywood, not interested in original ideas. I had some great meetings at the Jim Henson Company and DreamWorks and stuff like that. And they were all very encouraging. Jim Henson Company were wonderful, actually. Very encouraging, but they were all looking, because they knew I worked in publishing, the question they always asked was, is there a book? Is there a book that are there any up-and-coming authors? Anyone we should be thinking about? And I hadn't thought about that at all. And I'd only written the Robot Overlords novelization. I didn't have another book ready to hand, So I came back a little bit dejected because I'd spent a lot of money to go out there, and hadn't really come back with anything, apart from a couple of managers who I later dropped. So I came back and I thought, I need an intellectual property, IP. They kept saying, what IP? You got any IP? Mm-hmm. So I did a list of everything that was in the public domain, because I knew it would be another year before I finished a novel, and that was going to be the end of Magic, which actually I didn't finish because we did Back to Reality first. And I thought, okay, I need something that already exists. And I did a list of everything that was in the public domain: vampires, Frankenstein, werewolves, all this, and then I put on zombies, and I put a line through everything that had been done to death: zombies, vampires, and I was left with two things. One was H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, which I knew was coming into public domain in a couple of years. I think it came in 2018 or maybe later than that. And Jules Verne. And I loved 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I think it was like the third movie I saw at the cinema. I love that film. I distinctly remember my dad dragging me along to it. Star Wars was still showing, and I was outside the cinema, and they had the cards for Star Wars. And I want to see Star Wars again. He said, no, you're going to watch this. So we watched it, and it was great because it's got that fantastic submarine. It's got it's a wonderful story. And I thought, okay, Captain Nemo. And I knew that it wasn't in the books. I think in the original books, Nemo was Russian or Polish, but later on, Jules Verne changed it and made him an Indian prince. And in the second book, Mysterious Island, Nemo is on his deathbed, and he's talking about how he lost everything in the 1857 rebellion in India, and how, they taken his home and his family, and how he went to sea to take revenge on the British Empire. And I thought, no one's done that. Why has no one done that? why isn't it? Because I knew that David Fincher had been trying to remake 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for years, but I thought this is an original take on a big intellectual property. So I started work on it, and it took me months, absolutely months, because I put together a pitch deck, which was 16, 17 pages long, setting it up, talking about how, in my version of it, Nemo is a young man. He's returning from London, where he's been going to the best schools, but he's been bullied and picked on because of who he is. And he returns to, and he's Prince Dakar. That's his real name. He doesn't become Nemo. Nemo is Latin. It means no one. He kind of, absents himself from the world. And he returns home, and he's lost everything. His wife, his child, his home, all gone. And he's arrested and thrown into chains. And he's one of a number of people working on a top secret prototype submarine called Nautilus that's been put together by the British East India Company. And Nemo works with them. They realize he's a genius, and he works with the engineer, and they actually, and then he steals it. He gets a ragtag bunch of fellow prisoners, and they steal it and they take to sea. That was my idea. And it was a 16-page document with illustrations and, steampunk submarines. And I outlined a 10-episode series. So it was essentially like a little series Bible. Took me bloody ages to put together. Sold it on my first meeting. It's great.
Unbelievable. That must have felt amazing.
It was great. It was terrific. Well, it helped that the guy who bought it from me, a guy called Xavier Marchand, runs a company called Moon River. He's French, loves Jules Verne. He'd been looking for something like this for years. It was just one of those things. So they bought it from me, and we developed it a bit. Didn't do much, actually. It didn't need a lot of work. And then they got other producers on board, and then they got a showrunner on board. And they started pitching it to broadcasters and streamers. In the end, it came down to 2, and they went with Disney. This is where it all starts to go a bit sour. Disney basically didn't want me as a writer, or that's what I was told anyway, because I lacked experience in TV. So I was sort of held on as a script consultant. So they would send me scripts and I'd give them notes, kind of thing. But it was a bit like they all went to sea and had an adventure, and I was on shore sort of waving them goodbye. Bye, see you later, send me a postcard, kind of thing. Yeah. But the show was filmed in Queensland, Australia, with Australian crew, largely Australian cast. Shazad Latif plays Nemo, and he's phenomenal. He's terrific. Wow. Most people might know him from Toast of London, where he plays a character called Clem Fandango. Can you hear me, Clem Fandango? But he's got real charm. He's just fantastic in this. He plays the sort of the dark side of him really, really well. And they've built this incredible sets, And
were they using that massive Mandalorian
water tank? No, I don't.
What was the kind of any ideas what the kind of budget for something like this would be for a Disney series?
Huge. I don't know, but it was huge. But
millions,
anyway, so
millions and millions, right? I mean, it's got to be multi-millions.
So it's been shot. I think pretty much all the post-production has been done. I mean, it's done. And then Disney, because there seems to be a trend at the moment of the big studios, just rather than risking investment in marketing a show, they would rather take a loss. It's just baffling.
There's some it's something to do with accounting and tax write-offs. And it's happened. What was the big film that it happened to?
Well, it happened with the Batgirl film.
Batgirl, that's right.
Yeah, and it happened with a Scooby-Doo movie. And these films might never be seen. And, the streamers are cancelling. And of course, the problem is all these streamers, their business model is predicated on growth, more subscribers. But of course, the more of them there are, the more diluted that pool becomes, because we can't afford 7 or 8 subscribers each.
Exactly.
Most of us can barely afford 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. So what's happening is they're all hemorrhaging, subscribers. Mm. And their business model, their shareholders are going, where's the return on our investment? And they're going, so they're cutting costs wherever they can. So it's just absolutely crazy. So I learned about this in the trades. And it's been dropped by Disney. Now what's crazy is I've learned that if you were to go to Disneyland Paris today and go, because they have a Nautilus Captain Nemo attraction there, you can hear the score from the TV show there and Shazad's voice talking about adventures at sea and blah, blah, blah.
Whoa, so it's all tied in with Disney.
They were gonna convert the whole thing. They were going to put our submarine in there. It was phenomenal. All gone. So what happens now? Well, I mean, they're going to sell it to another streamer.
Yeah, so it hasn't been, it's not been dropped in the sense that it's been cancelled. It's just that Disney aren't going to be the ones that will stream it.
Yeah, it'll turn up somewhere else. But it's just a crazy, crazy situation.
Crazy world. And then on top of that, to make it even crazier right now, as we record this, we're still in the middle of a very long, extended writer's strike in Hollywood, which means there's very, very little content that's going to be happening. I mean, I don't know what the lead time is, but I'm guessing 6 to 12 months from now, there's going to be a sudden lack of content. And then the problem is everyone will be like, they're desperate for new stuff, which actually puts that in Nautilus in good stead.
I mean, the autumn, you're going to see a big crunch because a lot of these streamers have to report to their shareholders and their boards and say, this is what's new. This is what we're excited about. This is what's going to draw.
Of course.
And there isn't going to be as much there.
There's going to be anything that, the share prices are all going to plummet on the back of their
it's insane. They are so out of touch with how they've really fumbled it. They've really, it's crazy. It's not just Disney. Warner Brothers are doing. Warner Brothers reported something like a 200 to 300 million drop in finances because of the strike. Now, speaking as someone whose film was released, air quotes, by Warner Brothers with no marketing whatsoever. I
think this is the point of the strike, isn't it? Is to show the big guns that they can't do it without the writers and the actors. And I've always banged on about this with, authors as well. Like Amazon wouldn't exist without writers. I mean, I know they sell a lot of other stuff now, but they started out as a bookshop. Yeah. And if there weren't authors writing books, Amazon would not exist. So it's a very fascinating situation. I will watch this with bated breath because I'm absolutely gutted that it's not happening as planned. But as a little bit of, and again, this is for everyone else to take away, when stuff like this happens, often down the road, something even better comes out of it as a result. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that could be. Sometimes these things happen for a reason, and it'll be really interesting to see. So we'll have to, in the extended, maybe kind of keep track of the next segment. It's almost becoming like a series in itself, isn't it?
I know. What's annoying though is, as a script consultant, I get a fee. I was going to get a fee. I've got that one half that got, I've given feedback and they've given me a fee per episode. Yeah. But you only get half of that fee per episode. You get the rest of the fee when the broadcaster signs off on it. Oh. So I'm owed a ton of money, which could save Christmas. Yeah. And was gonna come because the show was going to be on in December.
Exactly. Right.
Was going to save Christmas, and now there's a big hole in my finances.
Yeah. Well, maybe someone else will buy it. Maybe Netflix will buy it up, or Apple will buy it up, and it'll be their big Christmas special. So who knows? Watch this space, folks. That is absolutely fascinating, though. I mean, to learn about what actually goes on behind the scenes, it's so interesting. The
lesson here as well is, if you can find a new take on an existing intellectual property that's in the public domain, I did get some money out of it.
Yeah. Well, you know what though, Mark? You can rinse and repeat that. You've been through the process. You know how it works, and if you do enough of them, then eventually one or two, will land potentially big time. So yeah, it's fascinating. I just want to say the film and TV rights for the Witches of Woodville series are bafflingly still available. Stroll up. I'm open to all offers. Ridiculousness. Excellent. Well, listen, folks, we hope you enjoyed that insight. I know I certainly did. And, this is why we do the extended, to give you a deep dive into some really fascinating areas. And watch this space. We'll talk a bit more about this as and when more news develops. So thanks again, folks. And again, spread the word. Tell your friends about the podcast, the patrons, the Academy, and help grow this podcast even more. Thanks so much, everyone. So before we dive into the wins, I will just say that if anyone is struggling with their writing, getting their writing habit, trying to understand the logic behind how do you measure how you write, is it getting better, is it getting worse, why should you be writing regularly, you have to go and listen to the extended. There's some really important stuff we discussed in real detail. It's gold dust, folks. So do sign up to become a patron or join the academy to get this kind of level of depth of analysis about how this will change your life as a writer. It's really important stuff, really, really important stuff. So Mark, on the other end of the spectrum, let's talk about some of the wins that have happened to people who've gone down that route, written a lot.
Great. All sorts of stuff. I'm delighted that the first win of this week is from a brand new member of the Academy, which is fantastic. Katie Wells has been with us just a day, and she's already posted a win. She said, proof copy arrived. The proof copy of a book I'm hoping to self-publish on Halloween has arrived. It feels surreal to see my words in print in a book. The words don't feel like they're mine, but written by someone else, which I'm not sure is a good thing or not. It is a good thing. Don't worry, Katie. It is a good thing. It's so weird seeing it. But I did it. Katie says, I've written a book and the proof is in my hands. The imprint I and a couple of other paranormal romance writers have formed also launched today. She's launched an imprint. Wow. Time for a cuppa to celebrate. Congratulations, Katie. That is phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's the kind of, amazing people we've got in the Academy now. It's just fantastic.
Fantastic.
I'm not the only one with a book out this week. Michael Dillon, who is another alter ego of Mike Shackle. He's got a D.I. Simon Wise crime thriller. So he does these fantasy novels, science fiction novels, and now Mike is doing these crime novels. Second one called The Killing Game is out today, and these are really, really good. I've read the first one. It's absolutely terrific stuff, real page-turning stuff. So big congrats to Mike with that. So it's The Killing Game by Michael Dillon. And another BXP member on the Facebook group, Mel Melser, she just had a cover reveal for her science fiction novel Refractions, which is coming on the 16th of November from Storm Publishing. We did a deep dive with Storm Publishing earlier in the year as well. So congrats to Mel on that. Well done, and last but by no means least, the wonderful Sarah Moorhead, who was on last week's episode so memorably. It was a post by Steve Gowland, actually, who's, again, member of the BXP team. He said, last night was a fantastic evening of firsts. Sarah Moorhead did a book signing at the Old Carnage Library in Liverpool, attended by, again, some Academy members, BXP members, including Tommy Dunn. And over 80 people turned up. That's actually phenomenal evening for Sarah. And Sarah's book, The Treatment, has been shooting up all sorts of Kindle charts and doing really, really well. She was mentioned in The Guardian at the weekend. Whoa. Just brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So it's just great to see so much good news out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, folks, if you've got any good news to share with us, do let us know. And pop along to the website. We've got a contact form there where you can send us a message. Mark and I do read every message that we get, and we do try to respond if we can. Whilst you're on the website, click on the newsletter tab and pop your name and email address in there, and you'll get a weekly reminder of all the great new podcasts we've got coming up, what we've learned, what you can learn from it, direct links to where you can listen to it. That's the newsletter tab. And if you'd like to do the 200-word challenge, which was very prevalent in our extended edition today, pop along to 200wordchallenge.com. It's a free challenge. See if you can write 200 words a day for 7 consecutive days, and then let it grow and see what happens, see where those words increase to. Mark, what about socials?
Social media, we are Bestseller Experiment on Facebook. On Twitter, Instagram and Threads, we are at BestsellerXP. Drop us a line, come and say hello, share your wins, share your good news, all that good stuff. And if you've enjoyed this episode, if you've been inspired by Harriet or any of the guests that we've had on the podcast, give us a rating, give us a review wherever you get your podcast from. That stuff really makes a huge difference, makes us more visible to people like you, and helps make the world a better place, and will lead eventually, I think, to world peace and universal harmony, where we all go out into space and live forever.
Absolutely.
Just saying, that's what.
And that means we could do the podcast for like an infinite number of episodes as well, which would be kind of cool. We should also mention as well, we're on YouTube. I just saw Mark's face. What? I just saw as well, we should mention that we are, I know a lot of people don't know this, we're on YouTube. We record every episode, and they're all up there for quite a long time now. If you want to find us on YouTube, just pop over to YouTube and type in at bestseller experiment, I believe. And then
link in the show notes. It's all there.
So do pop along if you want to see Mark's collection of toys in the background there. That's worth the price of admission alone, I think. Brilliant stuff. But listen, folks, we hope you've been inspired this week. Do join us next week for another exciting episode. And more importantly, because it's now September. September is Share the Bestseller Experiment podcast month.
It is.
It's
come around
It's
again.
funny that it's come around just after last month's Share the Bestseller Experiment podcast. So please, folks, the goal is every single day you meet some random stranger on a train. You go and fill up your car with petrol. You go to your grocery store and buy. Just tell them about the Bestseller Experiment, and and then we can.
If you're
share
at a
the love.
wedding and someone says, "Does anyone have a reason?" Just sound like, "Oh no, right! I was just listening to the Bestseller Experiment podcast." Yeah.
Do you know what? That could be really funny. Okay, good challenge for everyone.
Don't do that.
No, but like in the most inappropriate situations. Because do you know what? I saw a really funny video on YouTube, and it's not really funny because it's of where cars have had kind of bad accidents, and people driving past the cars going, "You can't park there." It's become a thing, and people are taking these videos. That's not nice. What we're saying, what we should say is that whenever you get a chance,
Where's this going?
Whenever you get a chance randomly, when anyone asks, "Has anyone got anything else to say?" Like at a wedding or, just say, Bestseller Experiment podcast is awesome. And if you write in and tell us when you did it, we're going to give you a shout out on the podcast. It has to be like something funny or different. So challenge us. That'd be great. All right, folks, listen, have a great writing week, and we will speak to you again next week. It's goodbye from Mark 1.
Bonus points for a funeral. And it's goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye. Going straight to hell for that one.
We started.